So, I am very happy to introduce to you, if I find it, I introduce to you Morten Heunig, the CEO of Vivino. Vivino, you all know, is the world's largest platform and community ratings, and probably the most influential digital platform we have in the wine industry. Morten is an experienced digital platform executive with more than 25 years of experience in various businesses. Before he came to Vivino, he worked at eBay, Stepstone, and the Bauer Media Group. So he knows all sides of the industry, the media one, but also the community one. So, will Vivino democratize the industry, or will it disrupt it? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me all right? Good afternoon. Now I need to work out technology here. Hi, I'm Morten Heunig. I'm the CEO of Vivino. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Today we're going to talk about technology, and we're going to talk about AI, and we're going to talk about really what it means when the machines take over. Before we do that, just very quick show of hands, just to get it right, who we have in the audience. Are there any boomer generation in the audience? So, welcome, sir. Who's Generation X? All right. And millennials? All right, good. Any Gen Z around? Does your mother know you're here? All right, let's get into it. You will likely not know that. You will. And everybody in Gen X knows what it looks like when the machines are taking over. It looks like this. Remember? Very scary. It doesn't have to be that scary, I'm very happy to tell you, because last summer, actually, the machines took over in my backyard. And it looked like this. This is my lawnmower robot who nicked a rake and made a run for it. And so I was quite pleased with that, because it meant that it doesn't have to be really scary when the machines take over. But the machines are taking over, and they're taking over in wine as well. Before we get to that, just very quickly, going back to what the problem is. The problem was, and still is, what we called the wall of wine. Right? This is what our founder 15 years ago encountered when he was buying a bottle of wine. He didn't know what to do. He was standing in that wine aisle. You've seen this picture so many times. You've seen it. You've experienced that feeling yourself. So, and that is still a problem. We haven't solved it yet. The other problem is at least the perceived elitism in wine. Right? It's a different language. It's something I don't quite understand. I am afraid I'm making a fool of myself when the sommelier comes over and asks me what I want to drink. I actually think I know what I like, but I struggle putting words to it. I struggle to explain what I like. So in the end, if we ask people who are saying that they are regular wine consumers, they're between 400 and 500 million of those in the world that drink wine on a regular basis, more than half of them admit that they find the process of selecting wine overwhelming and intimidating. Do you recognize that? The problem, I'm afraid, is getting bigger. And it's getting bigger because generations shift. Okay? So, as of last year, millennials are now the biggest wine consuming cohort in the world. So they have now replaced Generation X as the #1 cohort. And Gen Z has grown from 9% to 14% of global wine consumption only in the last 24 months. So they are the fastest growing cohort in wine consumption and will soon, in a few years, be the biggest cohort. So in just a few years, Gen Z and millennials together are the wine market. Now, why is that a problem? That is a problem because young folks consume content and information differently from Generation X and the Boomer generation. They are on social media 5 hours a day. We just learned from the speaker before me, Dr. Maas. You, sir, and your generation, you're on social media for an hour, right? Gen Z is on social media 5 hours a day. And is that your car? No. Okay. So 55% of purchase decisions that Gen Z make are originated from something that they find on social media. It is by far the biggest driver of their purchase decisions. Right? And we, as a wine industry, just need to pay attention to that. There is this famous study that concluded that Gen Z has an attention span of 8 seconds, and it is surpassed by that of a goldfish with 9 seconds. And I have wondered how they measured that. I think it's nonsense altogether, but you read about this everywhere. So when you go in and do a bit more research on that, obviously the goldfish attention span story doesn't hold. What does hold, though, is that younger generations have a superpower. And I mean millennials and even more so Gen Z. They have a superpower of high-speed content curation. The way younger people consume content means that they are extraordinarily fast at sifting through content, at making up their mind whether they want to dive deeper or not, making up their mind whether they want to pay attention or not, because obviously they can pay attention just like everybody else can, but they make the decision whether they want to pay attention in seconds. And their life has been a feat, and they are used to that. And so they sift out everything that is irrelevant, and what is irrelevant to them very typically is something that is too polished, not authentic, or indeed considered elitist. They don't even see that. So the problem for us when we want to address a Gen Z audience is typically not their attention span. It's typically that our hook is not strong enough. And that leads me to how we speak about wine, because that is the hook. And for decades, we have gotten used in this industry to a hook that, oh, sorry, I'll do something else first. I come back to that. So one thing is they consume content in a different way. They also make decisions in a different way, and they let other people guide those decisions. They're not so much guided by expert opinion and authority. They trust the crowd. So 73% of millennials let peers guide their restaurant choices. More than 80% of Gen Z, when they select a hotel to stay in, they trust the picture of a bathroom that a stranger took and uploaded to the internet more than the picture that's actually on the hotel's own website. Right? And Gen Z folks are 2.5 times more likely to follow financial advice from so-called finfluencers than from their own bank folks. And so if they trust the crowd to make decisions on where to have dinner, on where to go on vacation, or where to put their life savings, I'm fairly certain they don't follow a single wine critic for making a decision on a $20 bottle of rosé. Okay? And so we need to speak to them in a different way. We need to hook them in a different way. We need to make it relevant to them. And so going back to my point from previously, the way we talk about wine is a topic and is a problem. And I've just taken out a couple of examples that I liked. This wine, it's an Australian Riesling. Apparently it tastes like a freshly opened can of tennis balls. And that's a way to describe and I think you will talk to us much more in a bit, but that's a way to describe what other people would call the smell and the taste of kerosene or rubber, all of which is meant as something very nice and something very lovely in wine. I'm not so sure a young audience hears the same thing. It's all words that are used to describe the note of shale, which is what these wines are growing on. When you ask normal people, they will say it's a crisp, zesty lime with a stony note. That's what they write on Vivino, right? And that's how real people talk about wine. Robert Parker talks about this as one of his favorite wines. He does actually like it, although when you read his review, it's not the first thing that springs to mind, because he says it tastes of sweaty settle and barnyard. And what he's trying to do is describe the note of a wild yeast called Brett. And it is something very desirable. And he describes wines that he loves in these terms. He also finds them hedonistic and complex. And everybody else just wonders what he's talking about, because they think that wine smells of horse. And so when they drink it and they rate it on Vivino, the ones that like it say it's big, bold, and earthy, and it needs a steak. Here's my favorite example. Janice Robinson, master of wine, very famous wine critic, looks at this Sauvignon Blanc, tastes it, and says, it tastes like cat's pee on a gooseberry bush. And I don't know how many of you know what that tastes like. And this is a knowledgeable audience, right? Everybody else just goes, what? And it is so obscure and so surreal that there is a wine producer who actually called their wine cat's pee on a gooseberry bush because they found it so funny. Now, still, I think most people would find it more relevant and appealing if it's reviewed as citrusy and acidic, and that's what people do. All right? Now, in Vivino, our mission is to democratize wine. What we work on is to make wine accessible for everybody and not just for the experts. And so for the last 14 years, we've built our app and our community around the promise of making wine more approachable and opening up the world of wine for everybody. And we have now passed 3 billion scans. We now have 250 million reviews or ratings, and we're by far the biggest community in wine, and we consider ourselves the on-ramp for new generations into wine. And we're trying to help them wherever they are, and what they really do is they help each other wherever they are. So that's who we are, and that's what we do. We've been working on crowdsourced ratings for many years. We've built this community for many years, and we have now given this crowd data an AI brain. And so we have now built what will likely go down in history as the Terminator of wine, which will dominate the world of wine reviews from now on. And here he is. Please meet Corky. Corky is the new personal AI sommelier that we are releasing these days. It's out. Some of you will already have that on your phone. If not, there will be a QR code in a second so you can get it. It's the first generation of an AI sommelier product that is trying to do the following. We have seen experts rating wines and talking about wines. And obviously experts know a lot about wine. And there's no question that experts with their training and their experience have an ability to explain the quality of a wine that we don't have. It's also a bit of a monologue. The last decade, we have moved that into a conversation by building a crowd platform. There's Vivino, there are other crowd platforms, but wine has become a conversation because now the data is out there and you can find data about wine in your community and in your crowd. And we have now combined that with the only set of data that really matters when you choose a wine, and that is your own preferences and your own taste. Because we believe that it's not a question of either critics review or crowd reviews. It's a combination of both, personalized to your preferences through technology, and that is exactly what Corky does. So, in real life, you could ask Corky a question like this one. I'm having grilled sea bream tonight, what should I drink? And Corky could answer, that sounds delicious. Good thing you like fresh acidic mineral whites. Remember the Vermentino you had in Liguria last summer? You loved it and you rated it 4.4 stars. That would go really well. And you have one bottle left in your cellar, which actually needs drinking soon. And that would be really good. Another great fit would be Albarino. You have not rated an Albarino yet, so you may not know anything about Albarino. You may never have tried Albarino, but that could be a good choice too. Here are a couple of Albarinos that are available for purchase, for example, on Vivino. Would you like to learn more about Albarino? So you can see that what it's trying to do, it's trying to get information about wine from different sources, and it's making it relevant to you. And we believe that that is the future of using data and using technology in wine. And if you would like to try that, here you go. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We might be part of a revolution. So if we are, we would like to discuss on our panel. Please, Morten, take a seat. And I would like to introduce the other panelists to you. Morten, you could sit there, please. The other panelists to you. First, we have Janice Wang, Master of Wine, the first Master of Wine residing in Denmark, and someone with a very interesting biography. She studied, for example, at MIT and in Oxford, and did computer science, design, and psychology. So very interesting. And now she is an associate professor at the University of Copenhagen and does a lot of research into flavors and what people think about them and how you taste them. Hi. My second panelist is Fricke. Fricke is founder and CEO of Viva eCom Group. And for the Germans in this room, you might know Wine and Black. That's him. He did this since 2018, I think. And but the group is growing and it's growing fast. So we have, for example, seen Vicampo becoming part of it. And he has a background which is not from the industry. He worked for Roland Berger and Bauer Media, where you both maybe met, and is now since, I think, since 2018 in the wine business. So welcome, my panel. So you all have microphones there? Great. So let's start. This was really interesting, a lot of information. So Janice, if you stand in front of this shelf we have seen with the 200 bottles, how would you decide?
How would I decide? I hope you can hear me in the back. I think it depends on what is the purpose. I think with the wall of wines, if I'm selecting wine for teaching, that is one thing. If I want to select the best value at objective quality, that's another thing. But I think for most people, they want to select a wine that will go well with their dinner tonight. So I think for different strategies, different purposes, you would have a different way of selection.
Yeah, and what would you do? Would you think, or what would you tell people to do? Would you look at an app? Would you tell them read something? Would they just say, oh, this is a nice label? What do you think people would do when they stand in front of this?
Yeah, so I do a lot of research with consumer behavior and psychology, and I can say that how the label looks has a big impact. How heavy is the bottle makes a difference. When the consumer is not so sure about what's inside the bottle, you rely a lot on external cues. Even the music that they happen to play in the store could influence what you get. So personally, I come from a computer science background, so I like technology. I welcome the AI overlord. And I actually think that the new Vivino app looks really cool with the conversational AI. So I actually think it's a good idea.
Okay. Can we just for just a second come back to the music part? How does music influence that? That's interesting.
Yes, so I did my PhD in experimental psychology at Oxford on music and taste. Both how music affects the way we actually taste the wine, but also there's a lot of evidence showing that the music you play can change behavior. So there are research that show if you play classical music in a wine shop, people end up paying more because the classical music primes this idea of premiumness. There's also research really fun that if you play French music in the supermarket, people bought more French wine. If you played German music in the supermarket, the people bought more German wine. So maybe Vivino should also come with music to play in the background.
So, Christian, are you now planning to put music on your website?
Not yet, but I'm learning.
Okay, so obviously your customers don't have a shelf. How do you make them decide?
I think for us as an online retailer, we work quite similar to a traditional retailer. Like 30 years back, you had like the traditional brick and mortar retailers, and they have like, first of all, they have this curation part, which I believe is very important, and you have a different approach than we are. We are curating our portfolio so that we have like, I don't know, a couple of hundred wines listed and really make the selection ourselves and believe this is the best selection for our customers. Secondly, we understand our customers very well, and we have all the like background around the wines, so all the knowledge around the product itself, the critics, the ratings from our customers for these wines, and this is what we try to bring together, and actually work very similar to a brick and mortar retailer back in the days. But we can send it out to thousands at once. Yeah? So we use data and technology to really make it scalable. But we are trying to replicate this old school experience of buying from a very well knowledgeable retailer.
Okay, but we have now seen Vivino gets better. They have now a sommelier, Mr. Corky. So how do you position yourself against this maybe potential killer app?
Yeah, when I started back in 2018 in the wine industry, and I came from the media industry where Google killed our business model, and I thought, okay, now I ended up in wine, and now we have Vivino, which is the next Google that will kill our business model. So far, we have a very good coexistence, I would say. Yeah. So, I'm happy about the competition. I think it's another data point that we might use at some point. But our job is to really cut through the clutter and like have like all these different data points, label, package design, of course the juice that's in the bottle, maybe at the first place. All advertising, all comments, all consumer preferences that we see around it, and really curate this and bring then the best product to every consumer, like a sommelier back in the days.
Okay, so Morten, are we moving from expert authority or consumer authority to data authority with your new Mr. Corky?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think Corky doesn't have an opinion of his own, and so it's not a question of is it one or is it the other or is it Corky. Corky is looking at what everybody says, and so the AI sommelier is looking at expert ratings. It's looking at what is the discussion about this wine on the internet. It's looking at what's for sale with Christian. And at which prices, if Christian chooses to work with us, obviously. So we're trying to enable rather than compete. Corky also looks at what you like and what you have tasted and rated and reviewed in the past yourself. So it's more of a combination of data points, really, than taking over the choice from somebody else or the advice from somebody else. That's not what AI is supposed to do.
Yeah, but especially this part that Corky knows what I've done so far in my past, or what I kind of liked so far in the past, so far has been the expertise of the trade. So
But, hardly. So I always dream of this brick and mortar wine shop that, actually my parents have one right where they live. It's a wonderful store. And they have a wonderful curated collection. It's a great place. You can go there, you can taste wines. They actually know my parents and they know what my parents like. And so for them, that is a fantastic experience. It just doesn't scale. Right? Outside of the small city where my parents live, or the 3 streets around the shop, it has a difficulty to scale. So what we can do is we can help retailers everywhere, online, offline, to bring them the consumers that are the right consumers for the curation that they have, for the content that they have.
So your business model is not to sell the wine by yourself, but to enable partners to do that.
Yes.
Okay. So Christian, do you feel enabled? Do you feel enabled? Would you like to cooperate with that, or is that something you might think? Without telling us your business secrets, of course, we are on the panel here. But is it something you think would be helpful for your business?
I think we have to go one step back because we are talking about the consumer. And I think, and then Janice can tell us more about this, but especially in wine, the consumer is super different. And I think we really have to think about whom are we talking to. And this could be someone who's not knowledgeable about wine at all and can only distinguish red wine and white wine by the color. And they probably buy in a supermarket when it's on sale, when they like the label, when they have Italian music, they buy a Primitivo and that's it. Then you have the consumer who's a bit more knowledgeable. They know the different regions, the grape varieties, a little bit about the taste profiles. So it's the typical buyer of at an online retailer or in a brick and mortar store, like specialized wine store. And then we have a very small tip of the icebergs, which are the real connoisseurs and the real people who understand wine. And we are all in the bubble here on ProWein, of course. So we believe that this small percentage is the wine world, but it isn't. So I think we really always have to think about okay, whom are we addressing and who do we want to reach? And then for a certain target group, something like Vivino is probably the right tool or could be the right tool. And for others, it's different approaches. And I think the last slide that you had was experts, community plus AI. And I would see it quite similar, but I would arrange a little bit different and say okay, we have experts. We have, you say community, I would say consumer preferences, and then underneath is AI, and AI is an enabler. And whether it's a chatbot-like sommelier tool that you have in the front end, or just the data stack that is below to really hyper-personalize and make sure that every consumer gets exactly the wine he or she truly loves. I think this is where AI is playing a huge role and really revolutionizing our business model and many other business models at the moment. But I would see it not just as a additional front-end tool that we can all see. It's more like an infrastructure that's beneath.
Absolutely. You don't have to answer that, but to both of you, this infrastructure is probably quite expensive, isn't it? How do you plan to do that cost-wise?
No, I wouldn't say it's expensive. You need to have your things together in terms you have a good data strategy, a data stack, everything in organized, consistent databases. If you have your whole business in paper, in folders, in the shelf, or on PDFs somewhere, or stored on computers, then it's more complex. But if you have your data together, then to set an AI on top to really get the insights out of this AI and use it, it's fairly simple and pretty cheap.
Okay, would you agree?
Yeah, the expensive part is building 3 billion scans and 250 million ratings. And that took us a decade, and that was really expensive.
Yeah.
Using AI to make sense of it is comparatively cheaper.
Okay. Janice, you are looking into AI critiques consumer a little bit. What does your research tell you how consumers react to this difference between a wine critique, a peer recommendation, and an artificially constructed recommendation?
Right. So first, I can say in decades of wine research that looks at the difference between experts and novices, there's a huge difference. There's like a gulf of division in terms of how do experts versus novices use languages to even describe their experiences. There are very famous studies that show if you give novices expert reviews, like 3 reviews and 3 wines, can they match them? No. Because experts use different language. And you know, I'm a WSET educator, I'm a master of wine. A lot of what this education is about is coming up with consistent language usage. You have to learn the vocabulary. The cat's pee I wouldn't write on the MW exam. The tennis balls maybe. But a lot of what the education does is that you learn to speak a new language that the novices don't have. They use a different language. So therefore, often it doesn't make sense for a novice, a normal consumer, to read an expert review because they just feel confused. And people don't like feeling confused. But I'm not saying that expert reviews are not useful. Obviously they are. I think that often expert reviews are targeted towards other experts. It's a language that everyone else can understand, and it does matter. I think the beauty of these AI tools is to help novices understand what is the expert trying to say. You know, I teach on a lot of courses at the University of Copenhagen. I teach a lot of statistics. Students hate stats in general. But something that I have been using AI to do is to, I will prompt an AI agent to how do I explain this concept to a 5-year-old, to a 10-year-old? Like, how do I break down a complex concept so someone can understand and learn? And I actually think that AI offers a great opportunity to help people learn more about wine in a very easy to approach, not snobby way.
So if you want to see fun and really see some of her research, there's a great video at YouTube, a TEDx call, where she explains complexity or the different perception of complexity. It's really worth watching, just to do a little advertising, because I really liked it in preparing this panel. Your research also goes to this thing, how bias tasting is. So if you look at open tastings, at blind tastings, expert tasting, that's consumer tastings, and you do also a lot of research with consumer tasting. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So the fun part is a lot of my research has to do with how do we make a wine taste different without changing what's in the glass. So the music, the background noise, the lighting, color, the label, the weight. I've dyed white wine rosé colored before, and I can trick experts. Actually, it's not about tricking. It's actually just how the brain works. It's predictive coding. So it's not really biased in that way. But on the other hand, I do a lot of competitive blind tasting competitions where it's all about being able to taste objectively. So there's like a duality here. I think the beauty of wine, and I might get into trouble with the Institute of Masters of Wine for saying this. Let's see, hopefully I don't lose my title. I think the beauty of wine is not so much what is in the glass, as what is the story that you tell someone when they're tasting it. And often for consumers, I think it's possible to get most people to like a wine if you present it the right way, if you tell the story the right way. Wine is not orange juice. Like, there's so much complexity in it that you can actually pivot and alter people's taste experience of that wine by how you introduce it. And there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I come to you in a second. But Christian, you do a lot of wine ratings on your website as well. And you do a lot of nice presenting. So who's doing these wine ratings? Is it a human, or is it really a person in your company?
Yeah, we have editors, we have wine purchase, so human beings, very nice colleagues who do this, and they get supported by AI, of course, and by automated processes, etc., to make it as efficient as possible. And we have like, I would say it's at the end it's like 3 different angles. We have our purchaser who are like real wine experts, sommeliers, Geisenheim, etc. So they really understand wine. We have all the ratings that we see, and whenever the Parker points or Platter or Suckling or whatsoever comes out, we are searching for it and then look if we need to update something or if there's something interesting coming up that we did not see so far. And we also ask our customers how they perceive the wines that we sold to them. And this is a very important data point for us, because I think at the end of the day, it's about matching expectations. Yeah, so we're describing a wine, we are telling a story. This is a nice Rheingau Riesling with a typical crisp, clear Rheingau Riesling taste. And then when our consumers come back and say like, oh no, it's pretty fat and boring and was not like a Rheingau Riesling, this is a very important data point for us. And we would like actually delist these products if they fall beyond below a certain threshold. So I think this is a very important part. And then the other part that I want to add to just what you just said is like, I think this discovery part is also very important. We have to make sure, I think, in general in the wine industry, in Germany, everything goes into Grauburgunder and Primitivo. Great products, nice margins, but not really like the top of the wine world maybe, in some cases. And I think it's so interesting to show these products, and we all know this when we are in a restaurant and there's a sommelier and he or she recommends something to us that we did not try before, and we really see it's a nice match and we discover something. It's much better than to know a wine and know that Beaucastel is a great wine and it's on the wine list and I just order it straight away because I already had it 10 times in my life. Yeah, and I think this is something where we all, like, whether it's human or AI, have to make sure that we are not ending up just in the middle with everything. I think it has to have some like corners and sometimes a little bit of like learning something new and discovering something new. This is what makes this industry and this product so inspiring and playful. And if we lose this just by efficiency and numbers and automated processes, I think we cut out a very important part of our industry.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, especially if you talk about this average thing. When I look at Vivino, I sometimes have the impression, which might be wrong, that users very often stay in the middle because they don't give 1 point, they don't give the full point number. It's more that they kind of fear the extremes.
Well, it's true that very few people rate wines very low, but they do use the scale from, I don't know, 2.5 to 5 pretty consistently. The interesting thing is the more ratings a wine get, and we're talking thousands and at times tens of thousands of ratings, the more rating a wine gets, the closer it gets to the critic and expert rating. So there is a clear correlation between the crowd ratings and the expert ratings, which I always find interesting. But there's so many, and you mentioned a couple of points. There isn't a rating for a wine. There isn't a quality for a wine. It's so contextual, and it's so, look, most people will remember that wine they had in their summer vacation, and they really liked it, and so they brought home a box of that wine. And when they came home, it wasn't the same, because the context wasn't the same. And you will say, objectively, it tasted exactly the same, and that's probably right, but it's just not objective, and we are not objective. And so what really matters to most consumers is not an objective truth about a wine. It's, do I like it? And is it right? And is it relevant for me where I am right now in the context that I'm in? Right? And you can show me as many, Zinfandels at 4.4 Vivino stars as you want. I'll never like it because I just don't like to drink that grape. I want to drink something else. Now, is a Piemonte Nebbiolo with 4.4 star ratings as good a wine as a Zinfandel from, I don't know. For some people it is. Some people like something else. And so for me, taste can never be really objective. It's always contextual. And that's what we are trying to achieve with what we do and what we do with the AI sommelier that we are launching.
Okay. So do you have the problem that people sometimes maybe give very low ratings and maybe even say that it tastes horrible, or they say things that are wrong? This never has been in a barrel or whatever. Do you have a problem with that, and do you control viewers that they do not insult others or things like that?
Yeah. So obviously we do content curation in the sense that we don't allow insults, we don't allow manipulations, and we have pretty good systems that detect that. But apart from that, it's your personal rating, and that's what it is.
Okay, so I will just open for a second our discussion to the audience. Are there any questions in the audience which we should address right now? Is there anything you want to know? Yes, there's a question over there. Is there a microphone? Yeah, microphone is coming.
Yeah, hi. Is it on? Yeah, okay. Hi. Thank you for the amazing presentation, and the roundtable was very interesting. Morten, I have a question for you. You mentioned that 50% of people are overwhelmed. Where does the data come from?
Well, 50%. The truth is, the research said 48%, but those were the people that were asked in a survey whether they really say of themselves that they are overwhelmed and intimidated. Intimidated is a little bit higher, overwhelmed is a little bit lower. In average, it's just about 50%. But those are people that say that of themselves, that admit to that, and we believe that the number is actually even higher. I can't hear you anymore, sorry.
Sorry, how big was the sample and where was it collected?
That's a very good question. We did the surveys a couple of years ago. It was a valid number of consumers that we asked.
So Vivino ran the survey.
Yes.
Oh, instead of asking a third-party academic institute like where she works or where I work. For next time.
For next time. So, Janice, oh no, are there more questions? I've seen one, yeah. There. Oh, sorry.
Thank you for this wonderful discussion. I have a question that goes in the next direction. And Christian, I think your night dreams is about where do your customers come from? I know about search engine optimization and the AdWords, and the big question is, will AI be the new Google and feed the customers to you? Is that something, again, where you, Morten and Christian, might meet or match?
Yeah, it's the most important question, so it's a very good question. Where do the customers come from? But it's the main challenge. I think it's for us, it's for Vivino, it's for everyone in the like. How do we get the customers? And normally, like, our model works pretty much like a subscription model. It's not a subscription model technically, but like we get a customer, and normally if we fulfill their expectations and they're happy with the wine and our services, etc., they might come back. So we do 85% of our revenues from repeat customer sales. But always with every customer base, you have a certain churn and you have to replace this churn. And here it's like in the wine industry, my learning is that there's very few pull. So everyone thinks that Google is big, but it's not that big because people are not really searching so much for wine. It's a push product. Yeah, a push product. Push. So we really have to bring it to them on like a sommelier does and present this wine or a wine package and have a special deal or something. So therefore there are a lot of other channels, and this is not the best context to share which channels we use, but like a lot of channels that are much better than this. And therefore, for example, Amazon didn't get really big for wine. It's big for if you want to buy champagne, Moet et Chandon, Veuve Clicquot, or some like brands like Sessantani or Califrati or something. There it's okay-ish big, but it's like beyond that, there's not a lot of search volume. And Amazon, at the end of the day, is just a product search engine. Yeah, so for us, it's more like a push approach than a pull approach. And Morten and I will have a coffee in the afternoon and discuss what we can do.
That's great. So the panel is good for something, at least. There's another question. There.
Is it work? Oh, yeah. My question is more about like algorithm on social media and the impact that it has, and also about wine influencer and how you see this influencing the market in general.
Do you have a choice to?
I give it a try. We use social media, but it's not one of our main channels. And I think this is mainly because it's so competitive. Yeah, every winery, every small of our competitors, everyone, it's fairly easy to do your ads on Instagram. And therefore it's very, very price competitive. And we have like goals of what we want to spend on a new customer on average. And it's not very often that we can meet these goals on social media because it's such a competitive channel. It's like if you were to start an online shop today, the first channel you would do is social media, and everyone does. Yeah, so we try to look beyond the obvious. And for wine influencers, it also did not really pay out for us that much in the past. I think it's like our main customer, they are like 50, 55-year-old, so they have a different approach to influencers than my kids who are 15 and 17. Yeah, so and I think like for our target group, influencer marketing is not that big as it is for Gen Z. So we at least did not really find the right angle. We always do tests and some cooperations here and there, but it's never been a game changer for us. Yeah.
And how does the consumer find you?
I absolutely believe it will change. It is already changing. And I think what you're referring to is correct. In the audience that currently is your biggest audience, they have a different behavior. And if we look at where younger generations go, we see that Gen Z, for example, make 55% of their purchase decisions based on what they see on social media. More than half of the purchase decisions. Right? So it will become the number one channel, and it is already the number one channel in some of the cohorts, and those cohorts are growing to become the biggest cohorts in wine consumption as well.
Do you have a problem if you look at Gen AI search, also at social media, that alcohol as being a product which is not in every country easy to get, and that it is discriminated by the algorithm?
No, I think that depends on how you ask, and it depends on where you are and how you look for it. I think maybe one comment on the search thing. I understand that it's not the biggest channel into retailing of wine is not search and text search on the internet, and I agree with that, but it is still a big channel. And what we're seeing is, in general, text search is under pressure because the AI-generated replies already solve the problem in more and more cases. So Google, for example, has a massive challenge with their business model, which is based on you ask a question and then you get links, and the first 6 links you can see and the rest nobody has ever seen. And then you click on one of those, and that's not necessary anymore. In AI mode, more than 30% of the users say, that is fine, that's good enough, I don't need more information, and they're off. And it's a phenomenon they call zero search results, or zero click search. And it meant that Google had to revert back and do it the old-fashioned way because they made all their money on those links. And that is now very quickly going away.
Absolutely. But how are you visible then in the new world with Vivino? How do new customers who don't know you yet and use you every day, how do they find you?
So they find us, for example, through online search. We're quite visible if you search for wine online. And I'm very happy to say that a lot of people know us, and they know our brand, they know what we stand for, they know that we are there to help them navigate in an area that they find confusing.
Okay. Janice, you probably don't have that much problems with social media and I to be found. But does your research show something how the users would like to be informed?
I haven't done research on this myself, so it would be very interesting. I've done some consumer testing on what people think about natural wine because in Copenhagen that's really big. So I do think there is a certain generation gap difference. I also just want to point out, I think that in Asia the use of social media to sell wine is much more prevalent. And the infrastructure is much better suited for like one-click shopping and delivery compared to what it's like in Germany or Denmark.
Absolutely. So a small hint. Tomorrow we'll have a panel where we will A, discuss Amazon as a channel to sell wine, and B, discuss how you sell wine in China with social media. So come back tomorrow at the same time. But are there more? There's another question.
Thank you. Sorry, this is a broad question, but if you were in the board of Wines of the World, not Wines of Chile, Wines of Australia, Wines of France, etc., how would you use new technology to appeal to young people to drink more wine? Thank you.
Anyone?
I can give it a try. So I would use technology as much as I can, as quickly as I can, to understand who I'm selling to and what is relevant to them. Because very quickly this world will change into, I may not understand myself exactly what I want. I may find it difficult to put in words what I like, but my behavior on the internet, on platforms like Vivino, has been tracked. And so the platform knows what I like. And the platform will curate content that is relevant for me.
So here I strongly agree to Morten. No, I would also agree. It's like, I think really understanding the consumer as best as you can. And if you saw the speech just before, we had our round here on Gen Z and how they interact and eat their yogurt with a fork and stuff. Yeah, I think it's really good to understand like where's like the new stuff upcoming. I mean, if you look at other beverages, like all these like functional drinks that are coming up, like soda with high fiber and high protein, etc. I mean, this started very small as well, and you can really use AI to find these new trends coming up. And then when you're early on these trends, there can also be a first mover disadvantage if you're too quick. But if you really see that something's happening, and then you are right there on the spot, I think that's where AI will play a very, very big role in really understanding the consumer going forward. Yeah.
Absolutely. Another question before I ask one? Yes, there's one.
Thank you so much. Janice, you said that wine is like a story. People like to hear this story, but in Vivino there is it's not really a storyteller. Do you plan to input that in your app or absolutely not?
So we believe that every month there's about 10 million storytellers on Vivino. That's how many active users we have every month. And they all leave ratings, they all leave reviews, and they have turned wine into a conversation. And we're very cautious with adding expert voices to this community, because not everybody in the community actually wants an expert voice there. They do respect that there is an expert voice. And I think everybody understands that wine critics and people who have that education that Janice, for example, has, know a lot about the quality of wine and can explain it. But they're also using a language for other people that speak that language. And most people don't. And so they want to be spoken to about wine by people like them. And that's why we're very cautiously, handling what you may call expert voices.
But can I just add to that?
Absolutely.
Because the way I interpreted your question was maybe on Vivino you can encourage your users, your 10 million users, to talk a little bit more about maybe the context. Talk, like maybe they can become more storytelling, because we do have this slightly old-fashioned concept that a wine tasting note have to be, you know, color, smell, taste, end of story.
Yes.
We've done studies where we ask people to describe their emotions and feelings after consuming something, and you get really rich material that I think would appeal to other users much more than just, what is the alcohol and acid.
I fully agree, and I mean, there's lots we can do still. The next thing that we're going to double down on is to rate the relative quality of the reviews for you. So if you're looking for wine, you are a novice, you don't know a lot about wine, you don't want the expert talk, you will find some reviews very helpful. And you can let us know which reviews you find helpful. We will also detect from the language you use when you give reviews where you are in your wine journey. And so Corky, that you just met, will very soon start speaking to you where you are, and will try to meet you where you are on your wine journey. And will follow you as you know, if you want to, as you mature in your wine journey, so will Corky, right? And speak to you differently, refer to other reviews. People that maybe have more experience in drinking a certain grape will show up in the reviews that we surface to you. So we will make it more and more contextual.
It sounds a bit scary. Are you planning to go? Yeah, don't you think? So, are you planning to move in this direction? More storytelling, more follow the consumers through the journey in wine, with you, without you?
Yeah, I think that's our day-to-day work. To really, like, I mean, 10 years ago we sent out a weekly newsletter to everyone. Today we send out like very personalized selections for every consumer. And we are moving more and more into the direction that we have like really hyper personalization to bring exactly the wine at the right time with the right offer to our consumers. So I think that's the core of what we do. Yeah.
Okay. And how important are ratings, points, scores, medals for you, for your consumer?
I would say it depends. It's like for us, it's really important that every wine has a reason why it's in our portfolio. And you also have a media background as a lawyer. In Germany, we had this Henry Nannen. He's like the big teacher for journalists, and he always had what was called the Küchenzuruf. So back in 1950 in Germany, the man would sit in the living room and read the newspaper while the wife is cooking, and he would scream or shout into the kitchen, you can't believe what they're doing there in Berlin, or by that time in Bonn, is politics now again. And then he would explain, like from this article, what he took out of it in one sentence. This is the Küchenzukunft. And I think this is what we're trying for our team as well, that every wine we can exactly say, this is a great wine because of. And it could be because it's a young female winemaker, it's her first wine that she did on her own. It could be 100 Parker points. It could be the best rated Chenin Blanc from South Africa. It could be whatsoever, but it always has to have this story. And I think when I walk here through ProWein, there are so many, like, where even like the ones who want to sell the wine can't really explain why it's so special. And why, like, I mean, here's a lot of wine to buy. We can't buy that many wines. And if they can't explain why their wines are really special, then it's really hard for us to buy it, yeah, and to sell it. And I think this is really, really important to have this one line why this wine is so outstanding.
The Küchenzukunft, the kitchen call. We are kind of running out of time, so one question over there. No? Okay, one question over there. Then we do last round, and then we are a little bit out of time. But as you are all here and still follow us.
Thank you.
Just continue speaking. Yeah.
Thank you all for your time. I have a question for Ms. Qian. As a wine master, you of course had a great experience in the segment of the fine wines. And how do you see, what is your perspective about the tone voice, the future tone voice, the future way of talking about fine wines when the boomer fine wine generation will be gone out of the market?
So I think two things. One, actually, the Master of Wine program involves tasting a lot of bulk wine as well, and supermarket wines, and learning about bulk wine shipping and QA, QC. So it's very even. In terms of fine wine, I don't think that it's true that, oh, Gen Z doesn't care about fine wine and they want to use slang for everything. I think people adapt and learn to get into a new segment. So this might seem a little bit controversial, but I don't think the language of fine wine will change that much, even with the generation shift. Because the kind of person who wants to go into investing in fine burgundies will try and adapt the language of that clique. So I think it's going to be a matter of assimilation.
So we will have a fine wine panel after that. So yes, absolutely. My last question, one short answer, one piece of advice. What would you tell the wine industry about recommendations and consumer trust? One piece of advice, if you would give the industry one advice, what should they do with these recommendations and how to deal with consumer trust?
I have to go first. Understand at scale what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and mine is similar because I am a professor of consumer behavior. Consumers are different, so there's no one size fits all.
Yeah, I have nothing to add, I would say.
Okay, so thank you very much.